colleagues from Korea. It's a pleasure to be here today with you in your conference, in your early intervention conference, to talk about a topic that really enthusiasms my life from many, many years. I'm from Portugal. I'm Ana Serrano, and I would like to thank Jeannie Choi Kang, whom I met in Chicago very recently in a huge conference on early childhood intervention from ISAE and DEC. And she invited me to be here today. So it's a pleasure to be here and to share some ideas about this paradigm shift in ECI and the need to be attentive to evidence scientific based practices for children and families on ECI. I will go through some basic premises that are important for recommended practices, but more recently we are learning more and more in neuroscience that really tells us the importance of ECI for early years. So I'll start by talking about some premises and implications of those premises for practice, and then I will be talking a little bit about how we developed the system of ECI in my country, and you are welcome to, of course, then ask questions if you have. So I'll start with science facts that underline recommended practices in ECI. And one of them, of course, is neuroplasticity. Early years constitute a window of opportunity to change the pathways of development. And the more we learn about neurodevelopment, we know how important are these first years. They are like the foundation of a house. The base or foundation is a term used in engineering to designate the structures responsible for transmitting the loads of buildings to the ground. Early years also constitute the foundation of human development, and we know that these first 5 years of life are crucial for development of those foundations of what we will be in adulthood. What are the implications of these for ECI practices? Of course, intervene as early as possible. We are learning a lot now from this new research on, for instance, on autism, on other situations, and we know how early we should be intervening. Recently, also in Chicago, we listened a presentation from the neurodevelopmental pediatrician talking about how the first year of life in children with autism is crucial for intervention. Then we know another science fact that is important for ECI practices that is crucial is that parenting functions require a set of informal and formal social supports, particularly when there is a child in most need of support. So like all parents, parents of children with special educational needs or at risk contribute to a variability of their children's development and social and emotional functioning. And even though the developmental outcomes obtained by children with special needs are clearly affected by the nature or severity of their handicaps or neuromotor disorders, research into the impact of parent-child interactions assumes that parents are the main agents of change for these children, and they continue to be even when children participate in early intervention. So we know that a child in itself alone does not exist, cannot exist. A child, of course, is usually within a family, and this family to perform the roles that are inherent to parenting, of course, needs a lot of different supports. And the supports can be, of course, from their grandparents, from other people who live in the family context, and friends in the informal support networks are crucial too. Neighbors, workmates of parents and the workplace of parents, more kind of formal services like medical services and early childhood education services and supports, and the community overall. So all these are very important to support parents on their daily roles of parenthood. And this is true for all families. When there is a family with special needs, it's even more important. So we know that the social support functions as a safety net, a net that holds families back or prevents them from falling. And this image of the safety net that usually are these social supports that really help families' well-being and well-being of families, as we know, it's crucial for these parent-child interactions. So Michael Guralnick developmental system model is very important and help us understand these aspects that I'm trying to present here. But we know that child development for good and for bad outcomes depend on family patterns of interactions. Family patterns of interactions, of course, depend also on the stressors that families have on a daily basis and how they deal with these stressors. This is true again for all families, but when there is a family with a child with developmental problems, these stressors increase because they have to deal with a lot of different aspects in their daily lives to accommodate the needs of the child. So the stressors, of course, can interfere with these family patterns of interactions. And as early childhood interventionists, we need to also be attentive to these stresses when we work with children and families to minimize them so that families can have well-being and be able to perform their role as parents in these positive interactions with their children. And of course, these family patterns of interactions also depend on family resources. And when we talk about family resources, I'm talking about internal family resources, such as parent physical and mental health, coping styles, competence and confidence, attitudes and motivation, financial resources, and social support. So all these are aspects that are crucial. And then we have, of course, the parent-child interaction styles on the family patterns of interaction, social emotional connectedness, natural environments and learning opportunities, health and safety. And this happens, all learning and all interactions happen on, like Gallimore, Bernhardt, and Weisner had told us, on the patterns of everyday life. And that's where we have to be paying attention and supporting families on a daily basis. So basically what I'm trying to pass here as of course important is the parent-child interactions, and then all the supports that families have, activities and learning activities that are provided to children, orchestrated by families and other caregivers to children on a daily basis. But parent-child interactions are crucial here in this process of supporting children's development and positive outcomes for children's development. So also we know that service providers' use of capacity building practices that actively involved caregivers in learning during visits appear to be related to improved caregiver and child outcomes. And we know that more and more this research has shown us how important it is to be parents as active participants of the work we do in ECI with the teams and with the professionals that are mediating, of course, in the team with the families. So involving parents on a capacity building way, it's very important for increasing parent self-confidence and support the learning for parents and of course for children too. To empower the family, and we empower caregivers that are daily with the child, and then they instead empower the child because they are the ones who are spend more time with the child on a daily basis. So what are the implications of these facts that I just mentioned, facts from science for ECI? We know and we have heard about the Copernic revolution, when Copernic said that the sun was the center of the universe. Here it was also a Copernic revolution when we understood better the role of families in ECI. And Turnbull had presented this idea of the system support to families. It's that it's not the centers, the services are not the center. And this is also the paradigm shift. Services need to be supporting families. So families are the center, and systems and services, are there to support, of course, families in their daily roles and activities. So we know that's also very important to consider that families are at the heart of early childhood intervention. Whatever we do in early childhood intervention, we must involve proactive parents in this process, support parents in different roles of parenthood, and make sure that we help them create an environment of well-being and of healthy interactions that, of course, we know have an impact on child development. Then another science fact that is crucial in ECI is that we know from science that infants and toddlers learn best through everyday experiences and interactions with familiar people in familiar contexts. Young children learn through the day with significant adults within the context of positive and trusting relationships. And this is really important to get this message that children do not learn in repetitive behaviors in 1 hour sessions of therapy or other type of one-to-one adult-child interactions. They learn on a daily basis with adults who are significant for them. And these adults usually are, of course, first of all, parents, extended family, and then, of course, early childhood educators on childcare and preschools. Then we have also, it's important to understand that who has the greatest impact on child development. This was a slide that I got from Early Childhood Intervention Australia, and it shows the life of a 3-year-old average week in the family, and usually they are up. The child is up 80 hours awake per week, up to 10 hours sleep per night, 20 hours in childcare, and 1 hour in therapy. And you can see through this graph the amount of time that he's spending within the family. So he learns, if we know that he learns continuously on a daily basis in interactions with significant adults, we know that families play a crucial role in terms of child development. So what are the implications of that fact too for ECI practices? Who has influence on whom? So we know that professionals should be working with families and other caregivers, namely early childhood educators or daycare professionals who spend time with the child on a daily basis. And this is what has most important impact on child development. So we have to shift, and this is another paradigm shift. We have to shift from what we used to do many years ago, which was working professionals directly with children in very small amount of time sessions during the week, either in therapies or other type of learning activities we promote with one-to-one children. And of course, we need to start working with families and with other caregivers to empower them and to develop capacity on these caregivers to be able to support and improve on a daily basis the development of that child. All traditional practices where professionals were working directly with the child for 1 hour, it's not enough. And of course, we should be doing this in all the different, in natural environments, in all the environments where the child is on a daily basis, such as families, which are, of course, the first primary natural environment for child development, then community, because there are lots of activities that happen in the community that families usually take children, and these are also sources of learning and development, preschools and childcare, of course, and different services that exist out there in the community, and children and parents can engage and can support. Of course, these activities will support development of children. Another aspect that we value in ECI, and this is another paradigm shift that usually we have to go through when we work in early intervention, because we used to, in traditional practices, we would work directly with the child, much more child-centered practices. And now we are saying we need to work with families and other caregivers. So we need to be close to families and create these confidence connections and relationships with families. And the transdisciplinary teamwork, it's a teamwork that supports these ideas of being close to families and include families in the teams in ways that are much more easy for building confidence and trust and capacity families. Because the transdisciplinary team approach, what it is a team with different professionals, because we need lots of different professionals to deal with the complex of working with children and families. And these different professionals, one of them is going to be more in direct contact with the family. And of course, this does not mean the other professionals cannot visit the family or be with the family. Depending on the situations that they encounter, they might call someone to come along with them to see the family and the child and discuss particular aspects. But mainly it's a primary service provider. There are several names for this role. Sometimes they call it case coordinator, they call it mediator, but in the States now they call it primary service provider. And in Portugal, we call it mediator, which is the person who mediates between the family and the team. And he's able to support families, but of course he's not alone responsible. He has the team behind him. He has the team to support whatever is coming on the way and how to solve different problems they encounter. So this is also how we should be doing things, is working with children and families in their natural contexts and having a transdisciplinary team approach to this work. So what is early childhood intervention in 2021? And I particularly like this definition from Carl Dunst and collaborators. And he says that ECI is the different types of parenting supports provided by early childhood practitioners and other social network members. It is not only early childhood practitioners that can provide support to families. So that's why we need to understand the echo map or the network, the social networks of families, to be able to also understand and support and make use of these supports, natural supports to families. And that provide parents the time, energy, knowledge and skills. And this is very, very important, because this is exactly the role of the ECI professional, is provide parents time, energy, knowledge, and skills. How can we do this in our relationship with families on a daily basis? To engage, and then, of course, parents engage their children in their everyday child learning opportunities that promote and enhance both child and parent confidence and competence. So we are talking here about a changing of paradigm from practices that used to be more rehabilitative, mainly therapeutic and directly to the child. Very often parents were outside the room waiting for the visit to happen, but also even when they were inside the room, they were passive observers of what was going to happen, what happened there. So this was a very child-centered oriented in very limited times that the professionals had this impact on child development. And it was important, but of course, the value of this session was 1 hour on a week. And as we saw in that example from the graph I showed about Australia, it's what is 1 hour in 80 hours that the child stays awake on a week. So we need to really understand that we need to be working with the caregivers and the relationships with significant adults that the child has to be able to impact their development. And so if you see the image on the left side is what we don't want to see now, because that's really this old way of doing things, rehabilitative, therapeutic, only directly to the child, and families were not involved, and not on natural context. This was at the office of the center of the office of the professional, and not really the natural environment of the child. And so we need to move to intervention in the family's contexts, in the preschools, in the childcare, in the community neighborhoods, parks, and so on, where children really are, and they are on a daily basis, and support families on these more capacity building ways. Support parents to problem solve and answer to their needs and priorities, not our needs and priorities as professionals, but families' needs and priorities. So just to finish this part, I mentioned these basic concepts and ideas about what should be ECI, and this of course requires changing paradigm, which is moving from old traditional practices to what is that we defend now that should be ECI. And in my country also, about 30 years ago, we started doing this changing paradigm, and we were able over the years to build. It took us a long time, and of course this is a process. This is not something you change from one day to the other, but it's important to start giving first steps. So I'm going now because Jeannie asked me to also talk a little bit about our system in Portugal, my country, and so I'm going to describe you a little bit about our early childhood intervention, how we started this paradigm shift 30 years ago, and where we are now, and how we were able to create and develop a national early intervention system. But we are a tiny little country in Europe, next to Spain, approximately a population of 10 million people. So as you can see, of course, we are a little country. With very many different regions, geographical region, and a beautiful country that I invite you to come if you can to visit someday. So we have 5 regions, and then we have, of course, the islands. These are the 5 regions that we have, and we have then the islands, but the islands We have been doing a big change since the revolution in 1974, and we have, from 1987, we had 30% of the children in preschool, and now we have about 96.4% of children in preschool. So we increased dramatically the number of children that are now able to be on a free educational system in Portugal. And then we have school attendance mandatory from 6 to 18 years. Infant mortality rate also, just to give you an idea of the country, we moved from, in 1985, 17.8% to 2.4% in 2020, which in fact put Portugal as the fourth country on the world with the lowest rate of infant mortality rate. And of course, we have huge poverty rates. That's a problem that we have. And ECI is also important because of supporting also part of the children living in poor environments and vulnerable, which makes their development vulnerable. So how do we start? We did start with this. We had in the 80s. We did not have really early intervention services, and what this made parents go from one place to the other looking for services, repeating the history, and really this created a big stress to parents. They had to go on their own. They have to tell the story on a moment that they were vulnerable because they were just finding out they had a child with a problem, and they had to go from one place to another, creating a lot of stress. And so we, in Coimbra, this was in a specific region in Portugal, we decided we needed to start thinking about creating ECI services that were more integrated and they support families and children. And we started in Coimbra in 1980, developing a program. Coimbra is a small city, and we developed it in the district of Coimbra, in the central region of Portugal, a project that involved 17 councils. The district has 17 councils. So we created a project called Coimbra Early Intervention Project, which was a precursor of the national model. It was like a lab project that allowed us then to develop to a larger scale the national early intervention system. So how was the project structure? We had created an articulation at local level between health, social services, and education. And we did not create any new resources. We used the resources that were out there already. And so we used family health centers that we had in each one of these councils. And then we aggregated to these teams early childhood special educators from the education ministry, and of course doctors and nurses and different people that were able to be part of this team. Then of course we have teams, as I say, that came from different services. We had teams that came from health, the physician and the nurse, the educators from education, and then the psychologists, therapists, and social workers came from social services and private institutions that were funded by social services. So by the end of the 80s and the early 90s, a new stage in early childhood intervention began in Portugal. The Coimbra Early Intervention Project, based on inter-service collaboration among social security, health, and education sectors, was considered as favorable, influencing the development of ECI through the country. And from this point on, we started being known. The project was very positive. We had lots of publications even outside the country, internationally. And this was a good experience that we started having, and that call attention to also other regions in the country, and people wanted to enlarge this experience to the whole country. So we created a legislation, and so in 1989 we created the first. 1989 started the project, Coimbra project. 1999 we had what we called a joint executive regulation, and this was not mandatory. It doesn't mandate people to have this the same thinking about organizing services, but of course this was important because there were regions that started developing early intervention systems in their regions, but this didn't allow the whole country to be covered with this. So it took a long time, as you can see, but finally in 2009 we arrived to the public law 281 2009, where we developed a national system of early childhood intervention. It had this legislation had a similar structure and philosophical framework as the Coimbra project, so basically it was the same, and we created the system. This is the logo of our system, National Early Childhood Intervention System. This system, of course, articulates, it's a cross-sectoral system that, again, articulates health, education, and social services. And we have different levels of management of the system. We have, at top level, we have a national, what we call the National Coordination Committee. Then we have 5 regional subcommittees, 1 per region. We have 5 regions, so we have 1 per region. And then we have what we call the local early intervention teams. And these are, of course, teams that are part of the direct intervention with children and families all over the country now. So the structure, of course, as I said, we have a national coordinating committee. We represented 2 representatives of health, 2 representatives of education, 2 representatives of social services. And then we have these 5 regional subcommittees with 1 representative of each ministry. Then we have what we call technical supervision teams, who supervise the teams in the different regions, and logistics, provides logistical support to all the different teams in the different regions. And then we have now around 160 local early intervention teams who do their work in the country. So by doing that, we assured that all children, because our law says access, it is universal. Of course, it is not yet totally universal, but we have increased the number of children. As you can see nowadays we have around 21,331 children being served, and this is all over the country. And also, when we started, we had 7,540 in 2011. So from 2011 to now, to 2019, we have, these numbers are from 2019, we have 21,331 children. And we still need to, of course, increase the number of children and create more teams. We are raising the number of teams every year on. So we have this cross-sectoral work, and the teams, again, like in the project, the teams have these different services providing professionals. Usually teams are located in the local health centers in each community, but because that was also something important to involve health in this process, health professionals. And it is also, of course, the place where parents go for developmental checkups and consulting their family doctors. So this was a natural environment also for families to be, and that's why we choose the health centers to be the basis for these teams. But they have professionals from education, again, and from other private institutions in the community. And there's our website if you want to consult our website from Early Aid. Thank you very much for your attention. It has been a pleasure, and I hope you enjoyed, and I will be open for questions on the day of the conference. Thank you very much.